North Carolina is getting contributions now from just about everywhere. But who is the most critical X factor in the back half of the season?
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, it's Friday, January 19th, 2024. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host. We're joined today by our guy, Coach Bill Robinson, the head men's basketball coach at Milligan University. It's great to be hanging out, and we want to thank you for joining us to get your Carolina content every single day. Welcome in, especially to you everydayers. If you're new to the show, we're glad you're here too. I'd encourage all of you to come join us in the Discord where we're talking Carolina stuff all day long. It's a free thing to join. It's a great community. The link for that is in the show notes. And oh, by the way, this man here joining me tonight is now in there as well. You can find Coach Rob hanging out in the Discord. Coach Pat Kilby's in there as well. Man, seriously, it is a great time. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Coming up on the show today, we're going to get you ready for Carolina's road test at Boston College coming up on Saturday. So we'll have our Four Corners preview. We'll get you introduced to Boston College, let you know what else is going on in Carolina athletics this weekend. But Coach, before we get to all of that, we had a really great question actually from the Discord. We've had several recently that have come through specifically for you. And this first one that we're going to tackle today on the show, I thought was a great conversation for us to have as we think ahead to the back half of this schedule. So here's the question, Coach, and we'll get into the conversation. This comes from Stephen, PH, not a V, on Discord. And Stephen asks, who or what is the X factor for this team going into the second half of the season and tournament play? So, Coach, here, let me give it a little bit of extra context and setup. One of the things I've loved about this team is that it's not just RJ Davis. It's not just Armando Bacot, although they are the ones that consistently and constantly rise to the occasion. But we're seeing it from a multitude of guys. It might not be the same one every night, but somebody's stepping to the plate. So, Coach, here's the parameters I'm going to put on this thing for who is the most important X factor for the back half of the season. It cannot be any of the guys that in our purview have been the most three consistent contributors this season. So I'm going to rule out RJ Davis. I'm going to rule out Armando Bacot, and I'm going to rule out Harrison Ingram. So let's set those three guys aside. Outside of them, it can be starters, reserves, anybody, but it's got to be a player. Who is the most important X factor the rest of the way?
For me, it's Cormac Ryan. We can see the first half at Louisville when he hits 4 threes in a half. And I think we're all kind of waiting for him to have a game where he hits 7 or 8 threes in a game, and he gets those kind of looks. But when he starts making threes and Armando, is not able to be doubled, it just opens up the floor for everybody else. So to me, he's the biggest factor. His 3-point percentage got over 30% with his 4 for 7 the other night. I think he would have had that 7 or 8 threes if he hadn't gotten in foul trouble, and he didn't want to talk about the officials because he's a good Carolina player, but I'll talk about the officials.
I was going to say, I want you to talk about it then.
For 3 calls that were just bad calls, and that get him out of the flow, gets him out of the game, and it did affect his shooting second half. But I expect him to have one of those games where he goes off. He could very easily have 30 in a game one night. But to me, if he's shooting the ball the way he did first half against Louisville, Carolina's unstoppable. And that's why I think he's the biggest X factor right now for the second half of the season.
I love that, Coach. And can I dig a little deeper on Cormac from your coaching perspective? One of the things that I have really appreciated about him this season is that even in the midst of him not shooting at the way he wants to or, is very capable of, he's still finding a multitude of ways to contribute. How important is that of a tone setter for the rest of the team?
I think when people see that he's consistent with his personality, he's consistent with his intensity, his fire. He's got that New York City in him. He's just that type of kid. He just wants to win. So he doesn't really care if he scores or not, as long as they're winning. But when when you care enough about that, you're going to defend. You're going to defensive transition. You're going to get on the floor. You're going to make the extra pass. And that's what he's been doing. Shooting percentages are not great, but he's been doing everything else to allow him to still stay in the starting lineup. It's not that he's just one trick pony. Sounds bad. He has the ability to do other things, and that's why he stayed in the lineup, even though he struggled shooting the basketball.
Well, and what's so great about although he's struggling to shoot the basketball from deep, my man is 36 of 40 from the free throw line, shooting 90%. That would be leading most teams if it wasn't for some dude named RJ Davis in front of him on the lineup. And so, I love that. And he's bringing all of that. Coach, for my X factor, I'm going to go with Seth Trimble. And I know we're just coming off a game where Jae'lyn Withers had a season best. And we'll talk Jalen more, I'm sure, in a little bit. But even though he's been consistently rising, Seth has risen to a level so far in his sophomore year where I just implicitly trust him, whether it is that hounding defense, like that possession he had against Sky Clark on Wednesday night, Coach. That thing was that was textbook to me, like unreal. And it led to ultimately being an RJ Davis 3 that put the Tar Heels back up by 10. But whether it's doing that or consistently knocking down 3-pointers, it's not high volume, but you have to get out on him. You cannot be hand down on Seth Trimble like last year because he can knock it down. But the problem is, if you're a defender and you go out to guard on that 3, he is gone past you driving to the rim. I love the athleticism and almost like controlled, reckless abandon with which he attacks the rim. I think his ability to ratchet up the defensive intensity when he comes into the game, like at the under 16 timeout or whenever it is early on, man, it changes the dynamic, but keeps Carolina at a really high level. So for me, it's Seth Trimble. I love the fact that they, even though it's just man-to-man pressure, when he came in the game, they picked up full court. And they start high intensity, but then all of a sudden they push it even higher when he comes in the game. And to have somebody who can just absolutely get and guard somebody, to have a guard like that coming off the bench who loves to guard people, that's also rare. So, yeah, he's going to be a huge factor on the stretch. And I almost wish Carolina, I felt like part of Louisville's run was Carolina getting away from, I wish they had kind of kept that pressure going, kept the energy on some of that. But, that's me backseat coaching over here. So we'll ignore that. Now, Coach, here's what I love is the truth is you picked Cormac, I picked Seth. I feel like I could have made a defensible argument for many of the players. I could have made an argument for Jalen Washington. I could have made an argument, who did I leave out of this? For Elliot, like all of these guys, it's very possible that that's all a thing. I love it. Coach, speaking of that second half Louisville push, I want to kind of switch gears a little bit and ask you this question, because I think a lot of people are kind of just wringing their hands a little bit after what happened in the second half against Louisville on Wednesday night, despite Carolina's great start and their response to Louisville's push. Let me ask you to put your coaching hat on for a second. What is your talking point to your team in a moment like that, where you get this run out, you have a team down that you are frankly better than, but you let them back pretty close in the game where there's real game pressure, but then you push it back out? What's the talking point ahead of the Boston College game to learn from what happened on Wednesday night?
Yeah, I think they have to remember what they did to get that lead. Everything was so hard for Louisville early. They turned the ball over twice on out-of-bounds plays underneath their own goal. They had to call a timeout, after, not being able to get the ball in underneath their own goal. Everything was really, really hard first half. Second half, it came out almost like, hey, we're playing with a lead. Let's just be tentative. Let's not be as aggressive. We want to maybe run the clock a little bit. And that's not Carolina basketball. We want to play that tempo. You want to play that pace. You want to be able to push it up and down. You want to attack. And Carolina just didn't attack, and it allowed them to get good looks, open looks from good players. Hey, this is not the same Louisville team either. That's part of what, as fans, you look at they were awful last year. They're going to be awful again this year. They're not. They're not bad. Ask Miami. Louisville beat Miami the other day. They almost got NC State too. This is a different Miami team. I listened to Coach Payne's. I listened to Coach Payne's pre-Carolina press conference, and he was confident. They were playing well. They were shooting the ball great. He talked about how previous games they had shot nearly 50% from the floor, nearly 50% from the three-point line. I mean, they had been playing really, really well. So you look at this, and some people can say, "Oh, it's only a 16-point win." It's a 16-point win in conference in January. It's important. So yeah, there's those little, maybe some learning, points that you can talk about, but still really pleased with the effort and to be able to see a lead get down to 5, and then for them to say, okay, we need to stop this. And again, I know you talked about a little bit today. Coach Davis didn't have to call timeout. He trusted his team. He said, "You guys are going to have to figure out, just like Coach Williams has done. You guys are going to have to figure this out on your own," and they did.
Yeah, man, what an encouraging sign that was, Coach. You're spot on with that. And I'm with you. Look, Louisville, Miami's not the only team that Louisville's going to clip. They're going to get a couple folks. I'm just telling you, keep watching, Coach. I'm right with you in that assessment of the Cardinals. Great call there. Now, Jae'lyn Withers, we mentioned, had a great game, his best game as a Tar Heel on Wednesday night. How is he going to build on that? We're going to answer that question along with the rest of the Four Corners preview coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you that this episode of Locked On Tar Heels is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs just kicked off, and there's still time to get in on the NFL action. America's #1 sportsbook, that's FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets, guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is really easy to use, and they've got a multitude of different ways that you can bet. They've got same-game parlays. There's a new Explore tab where you can find all sorts of different bets. How about conference regular season odds? Coach, Carolina's odds keep getting better in the ACC race. Carolina -160. Duke is second at +160. And from there, nobody's even close. Wake Forest is third at +2,500. NC State at +3,100. Miami fifth at 3,400. And Clemson sixth at +10,000. Virginia's not even on this top 6 anymore, Coach. That is wild to me. So if you want to get in on some of that ACC regular season action, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, folks, Isaac Shade, Coach Bill Robinson here with you on a Friday show, getting you ready for Carolina at Boston College tomorrow. And we are now going to move into our Four Corners preview, where we give you 4 things that we're watching for in this game as a shout out, as a nod to the legendary Coach Dean Smith and his famed Four Corners offense. Coach, why don't you kick us off with the first thing?
My first one is Jae'lyn Withers, 15, 10, double-double. Can he use his momentum to keep his game going up? Seeing him play this summer, he was so exciting to watch, and the energy he gets, and he just hasn't really put it together. Is this him finally putting it together? And I think it is. I think this is something that can kind of springboard him to more minutes, to more production. And when you have a player like that, when he starts to get some confidence, it's scary, because then he can grow in leaps and bounds. And if you have a guy like that coming off the bench who can score, who can defend, who can rebound, and just run the floor and give you that kind of energy, I'm excited to see his development, his growth, and he could be a huge factor here, and not just in this next couple of weeks, but down the stretch. That's my big, first of the Four Corners today.
I love that, and Coach, it's not even just the production. I love how he's cut down on turnovers. It's been such a key part of why, like, where my fears were early in the season about him not finding his role definition, a lot of it was because I didn't trust him when he had the ball. Now I'm shocked if he makes any mistakes with the ball. Like, the ability to keep his feet, tightrope the sideline, and kick that pass to the other wing to Harrison Ingram on Wednesday night, which, frankly, if that had been Cormac Ryan, it clearly would have been a foul called. Let's just be honest about that. But then that play where he kind of it was like a reverse dunk, but not really a dunk, and he kind of landed in a crouch. But like, what? Who is he?
It was an amazing finish, and even the announcers were like, "Is that a dunk? Was that a dunk?" And I kept like, "Hey, we need to show this again, please." But he did. It was just an acrobatic, athletic move, and he's so athletic and long, and he can defend. In my opinion, anybody. He can guard the little guards, use his length and his quickness, and then the big guys he can front, make it hard for him to get the ball. He's got just a world of skills, and to be able to bring him off the bench it shows about the ridiculous riches that Carolina has right now on this team.
I really love the lineups when he's a small ball 5. I just kind of get giddy about what could happen athletically. Man, it's great to see back-to-back double-digit scoring games now for Jae'lyn Withers. Coach, number 2 in the Four Corners preview is I'd like to see a decisive road win. Now, you might say, Isaac, hang on. Carolina's only played 3 road games and they've won all of them by double digits. And you know what? You would be right if you corrected me in that way. And in fact, Carolina's won 7 in a row, every one of them by double digits. Carolina is 6-0 in ACC play. All 5 of them in this main chunk have been by double digits. The only one that wasn't was the FSU game where Carolina won by just, quote unquote, 8. But coach, here's why I say this about the road environment. Each of those 3 road games, the game at Pitt, at Clemson, and NC State, I loved seeing Carolina grit out tough wins in hostile road environments. I was proud of them. I loved it, but it felt earned in a tough way where they just had to really work and grind and really lean on the defense, which we love so much. But coach, what I'd like to see is Carolina get out to a lead tomorrow on Saturday, similar to what they did against Louisville on Wednesday night, similar to what they did against Syracuse last Saturday, to do that and give themselves some breathing room, but then keep the pedal down to the metal there and just play that full 40 minutes, more like they did against Syracuse, and not allow that comeback like Louisville had in the second half. So give me a full 40 minutes. Let's thrive on the road. That's point number 2.
No, I like that a lot. And that's the maturity that we're starting to see, I think. And that's what you're looking for. You're looking for the growth, even through wins. And I've been on teams where we've gotten better while losing, but you got to get better even while winning. And it sounds funny, but I mean, it's a win, but are we getting better? And I think that's what Hubert's really pushing lately. And it's not just about the wins. It's about how we win and continuing to get better day by day. I think that's what you're looking for.
That's right. Absolutely. So coach, why don't you take us on in then to point number 3 in our Four Corners preview?
Yeah, you alluded to it, but the defense has been unbelievable. The last 7 games, the 7-game winning streak we have right now, 61 points a game. If you can limit your opponents to low 60s, field goal percent is at 40% right now, under 30% from 3-point line, defensive field goal percentage. Those numbers are ridiculous. And I know Ken Palm's, it shows how good the defense has been, but it takes time to learn how to work together and put schemes together. And especially with the switching that coach wants to use, it takes time to figure out the communication and how that's done, and how can the mismatches be, maybe helping if you do have a small on a big or a big on a small, and how do you help a team who might be in a mismatch situation. But they've kind of figured it out, and they seem to put it together, and they're just playing super hard, and they're not giving up a whole lot of offensive rebounds. So you look at that formula of the great defensive field goal percentage and the great rebounding and being able to pressure the ball, keep the ball in front of you. Defense has just been unbelievable the last 2 or 3 weeks.
I love it. Folks, if you didn't have a chance to read it, I thought Brendan Mark's article from The Athletic about Carolina's defense that published on Wednesday was really good and helpful. If you need like kind of a breakdown of what the defense has been doing, that was a really great thing. Coach, every opponent in this 7-game winning streak has been held to 70 or fewer points, and that's what we're looking for. Can you continue to operate at that level? Because then it doesn't matter if the shots are going down. It doesn't matter if you get a pretty win like I was talking about looking for. If your opponent can't get to 70, Carolina is going to get to 70. I can promise you that, game in and game out. Speaking of which, number 4 in our Four Corners preview, what I'm looking for is more balance in the offensive bench production. We have seen a good deal of that, but it was not the case Wednesday night against Louisville. And that's part of what helps Carolina get to that 70 and above offensively. Now, the Tar Heels did score 17 from the bench on Wednesday, but the thing is that 15 of those were from Jae'lyn Withers. You'll take that and you love it. But the other 2 were 2 Paxton Wojcik free throws. That means 0 points from Seth Trimble. That means 0 points from Jalen Washington. Like, these guys need to be off. They're contributing in some phenomenal ways, but one of those ways needs to be getting the ball in the basket. Now, to be fair, Jalen Washington didn't get a ton of run in Wednesday night's game, so I'd like to see more minutes from him, quite frankly, but I would like to see Ben, and Zayden High, by the way, had a couple minutes and didn't score either. I should mention that. So, but overall, I'm very pleased with the Carolina bench's offensive production. Folks, you know we've been talking about it 14 times this season. Now, the bench has scored 13 or more points. That equals the number of times the Carolina bench did that in the entirety of last season. And in fact, they've done so 8 straight games now. So we're looking forward to another bench game of that's kind of the threshold I'm looking for is 13 or more points. And let's say that comes from at least 3 different scores. Coach, any thoughts on that bench production?
Yeah, and I think Jae'lyn Withers took Jalen Washington's minutes the other night. And it's hard to when the guys really, to stick him back in the game. And you guys know Paxton's my guy, and I love him. And I think at some point, he's going to make a shot. He's going to have a run. He's going to do some things that is going to help the team win a game that, late or whatever. I still believe he's going to get some minutes to be able to do that. But to have the bench production the way it's been, it's just unbelievable. It takes the stress off those big guys. And if somebody does get in, like Cormac getting in foul trouble the other night, you just need somebody to step up and make a shot. That's why the bench is there. And it's been great to see different guys step up. It's not been just one guy. So it's wonderful to see many guys be able to step up and do that. So I would love to see it be Paxton. I'm just a little biased about that. I'd love to see some plays.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, I think the fact that we had trouble picking our X factor speaks to the ability of this team to beat you from a multitude of angles. Well, Coach, we got to get to know this Boston College team a little bit. It's like they operate up there in New England and nobody knows about them. But folks, they've got one of my favorite bigs in the entire conference, an underrated 7-footer named Quentin Post. What else do Earl Grant's Boston College Eagles have for us? We'll get to that in just a second. Right after I tell you that this episode of Locked on Tar Heels is brought to you by Gametime. Hey, one of your New Year's resolutions should be to go check out all of the best sporting events and drama and theater and concerts and more in your area. Thankfully, to help you find tickets for that, especially late, there's Gametime, a great app, the fast and easy way to help you get last-minute tickets. With killer deals on last minutes, all-in prices, views from your seat, and a best price guarantee, Gametime has exactly what you need. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event, and thankfully, Gametime has got you covered with hot deals on tickets right up to the start of the event. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download their app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Terms apply. Download Gametime today. Lowest tickets, last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. North Carolina traveling north to take on Boston College tomorrow, Saturday, January 20th. The very typical start time of 2:15 p.m. Eastern time on the CW. So that'll be fun. No FanDuel line yet, but Ken Pom has it Carolina by 8. The Tar Heels lead the all-time series record 22-6. Carolina has won 4 in a row. All of those are part of the Hubert Davis area. He is 4-0 against BC. And the Tar Heels have won 16 of the last 17 in this series, Coach. That's quite the run. Unfortunately, though, the last loss in this series, that one of this last 17 was Coach Williams' last ever game against BC. So he'll have that ignominy on his record forever. The head coach of Boston College is Earl Grant. It's his 3rd season. He's looking for his first winning season at the helm of Boston College. Just missed it last year with a 16-17 record. Boston College not ranked in the polls, picked 12th in the ACC preseason media poll. Currently, as we record this, they are 86th in the net. That means this will be a quad 2 game. Quad 2, when you're on the road, is teams ranked 76 to 135th. So we'll keep our eyes on that. They're in the 90s, late 80s at Ken Pom and Torvik. Ken Pom, it's 91st. Offense is 58th. Defense is 155th. Very similar at Torvik. 85th overall 49th in offense, and 160 in defense. So, Coach, I think that means the offense is fine. Carolina should be great against it. But, man, the Carolina offense needs to go on the attack early and often.
Yeah, I'm actually an Earl Grant fan. We were on a panel
same.
together in a meeting. He's a super nice guy, and he's a great coach, obviously, to be at that level. So when it comes to the coaches in the league, he's not one I hate. So I mean, I actually can root for him a little bit when they're not playing the Tar Heels. But no, this again. We need a great start. I actually like the fact that it's on the road because it's a game. It's one of those trap games. And I like trap games in a situation when you're on the road because then you're together. You're together on the plane. You're together at the meals. You're together in the hotel. There's no outside influences, at least that you can control. There's no if people still get on your phone and stuff, obviously, but you have your team together, which allows you to kind of to set the mood, to set the tone all day long. So I actually like this being on the road instead of being at home, just because it allows them to be more focused, allows the coaches to control a little bit more their environment. So I feel better that it's on the road than if it was at home. I'd kind of worry maybe they just take it too for granted, but I don't think the coaching staff will let them do that.
That's a really interesting perspective, Coach. So you'd rather have a trap game be on the road than at home. That makes a ton of sense. Honestly, something I've probably never thought about or put together. Speaking of which, I was going to ask you this later, but you talking about that makes me want to go ahead and bring it up. This is Carolina's first Saturday to Monday turnaround of the season. This is the first thing I look for every year when the ACC schedule comes out because it is a tough turnaround, particularly when you're on the road as far north as you can get in the conference, and then you got to come home and play one of the other top competitors in the conference and a sort of, right, it's not Duke or NC State, but it is an in-state rival. So, Coach, how do you stay dialed in on this game and let wait to turn your attention to Wake Forest until Saturday evening when this game's over?
Yeah, I think they need to when you're doing your scouting reports here, maybe build them up a little bit more. The BC, I mean, you talked about the Big Center. You talked about, hey, we need to make sure we take care of. This is a team that was almost 500 last year. It's a team that's on the rise. We need to, and maybe even make it maybe believable when maybe you don't believe it. I mean, sometimes coaches, we have to be mad when we're not mad. We have to be, calm when we're really not calm. But sometimes I'm not saying you lie to them, but you make it seem, hey, this team's really good. We could lose to this team. We don't play well. We can lose here. And you really got to sell it in your heart, even if maybe you're sitting there saying, there's no way we're going to lose this game. But there is. And on the road, in conference, anything can happen. And they've got to know that. And they can't be thinking about Wake Forest. They can't thinking about Monday. They've just got to focus on what's going on now. And again, I think it's a whole lot easier to do that when they're all together all day long. If they haven't left yet, they'll leave early tomorrow, I'm sure, and they'll be on the road and in the hotel, and it's able to control all that stuff. So I'm more encouraged about that.
That's great. And it's great experience, the Saturday, Monday turnaround for the rhythms of the NCAA tournament that, yes, we can be starting to think about a little bit on our end. I know the coaching staff doesn't want the players getting there yet, but we can on our side of things. BC thus far is 11-6 on the rise a little bit. As Coach talked about, they're 2-4 in ACC play. Their best win is over St. John's on a neutral. They're kind of in the tournament discussion right now. St. John's is. We'll have to see how Coach Pitino does in his first year. Their ACC wins are Georgia Tech and Notre Dame. Unfortunately, two of the other bottom feeders of the conference, so don't really have any wins over middle to upper end of the ACC. Their worst loss is Loyola Chicago, and this is not like Porter Moser era Loyola Chicago. They've kind of fallen on some hard times the last couple years, but no other really bad losses. Their ACC losses are NC State, Wake, who we just talked about, Syracuse, and Clemson. In terms of players to watch, Coach, let me mention two. One we already talked about in passing, but let me say more on him. Quentin Post, who again to me is the most underrated big in the conference, leads the team with 16.9 points a game, 7.4 boards, 3.2 assists, 2.1 blocks. And oh, by the way, this is a legit 7-footer who's shooting 44% from three on 3.4 attempts a game, shooting 82.7 from the free throw line on 3.3 attempts per game. Coach Armando has a job that he's got to do Saturday. How can he handle Quentin Post?
A week about, Armando being a great, post defender, but when you stretch him out and have to go out there and guard the 3-point line, it changes things. So that's one of those things. Again, we talked a little bit about his weight loss in the past, and now he's lighter. And that's a big part of what he's needed to do to be able to guard some of these posts. It's not a big banging, league. I mean, you've got to be able to go out there and guard the Filipowskis and all those guys on the perimeter. And this is a great test for him. And I think it's not, he doesn't have to defend them one-on-one. It's a team defense. And they'll design something to be able to help him if, he gets beat off the dribble, or if he doesn't have the ability to get out there and close out. There are other guys to be able to do that. But that's a huge test for him. And I mean, thinking down the road, this is where he proves that he can guard on the perimeter for the pro level, wherever that is. But these are games where he should sit there and say, hey, there's scouts watching. This is the game I really got to step up my defense, because this is going to affect my future.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, similar to his matchup a couple Saturdays ago against PJ Hall, right? Who can do some of the same stuff. Not quite the same size as Quentin Post, but a similar style game. Another name to know is one that's familiar from Boston College. That's Jaden Zachary, third leading scorer at 12.2. He's not a threat from deep, but does lead the team in assists and steals at 4.3 and 1.7 respectively. The other double-digit scorers are Claudell Harris and Devin McLaughlin. Those are your four starters post Zachary, Harris, and McLaughlin, along with Prince Aligbe. And so we'll be watching out for that and how Carolina matches up with BC. Coach, should be a fun game. Again, we expect Carolina to come out and show again, but they got to do it. There are no assumptions. As soon as you do that, as you said, you can and will get knocked off. Folks, very quickly as we get out of here, let me run you through other Carolina athletics going on this weekend. Coach and I, before we recorded on Thursday night, the Carolina women's team won in Atlanta at Georgia Tech 73-68 to move to 5-1 in ACC play. Another great offensive outing from Deja Kelly, 27 points, really, really efficient shooting as well. The ladies will be back in action Sunday at home against Louisville, and so be ready for that. All right, Friday's action, swimming is in Charlottesville against both Virginia and NC State. That'll be 2:30 Friday, and then they're in action again on Saturday. Also, gymnastics hosts NC State's Friday night at 7:30. That's on ACC Network Extra. Saturday, track is in the Dick Taylor Challenge. Fencing is up in Philly at the Philadelphia Invitational. That's Saturday and Sunday, back in kind of Coach's neck of the woods up there. Women's tennis, a double weekend for them. They've got Auburn on Saturday at 11 a.m. And then on Sunday, women will face Georgia, always a tough opponent, at 1 p.m. And meanwhile, the men's tennis team faces number 12 Columbia back up in New York, but also back in Coach's neck of the woods Sunday at noon. So a lot of great action in Carolina athletics this weekend. We're really starting to get some more of these sports back up and going. It's a great time to be alive. Coach, great show as always. Can't wait to see what happens Saturday. I know your Milligan team is in action Saturday as well, so best of luck to you guys as you get back after it yourselves. Folks, thanks so much for joining us to wrap up the week. We'll be back with you Saturday after the game for a live reaction. Make sure you're dialed into that, and then Monday, a full recap of everything. Again, come join the Discord. We'll be chatting during the game in real time. The live game thread is awesome. It's free to join. The link is in the show notes. You can email us, lockedontarheels@gmail.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the show. Leave us ratings and reviews. 5 stars, please. Smash the like button so we know you are here. It's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. Can't wait to talk to you tomorrow after the game. Tune in for that. But until then, peace.